Sorry about that. I was expecting a video there. Good morning. Yeah, well, a woman goes to see her doctor, says, it's January. I want to lose some weight. I've tried all of the diets out there, and it seems like whatever I try, I gain the weight back again. Can you help me? And the doctor says, okay, here's what I want you to do, and you just need discipline, and that is that for 3 days, eat 3 healthy square meals, and then skip the 4th day, and then start the process again over. Just eat healthy for 3 days, and then skip the 4th day, and I'll see you back here in 3 weeks. And she had set a goal that she wanted to lose 5 pounds. 3 weeks later, the woman comes into the office. The doctor says, how are you? She says, I've lost 20 pounds. He goes, that's amazing. That's amazing. So, tell me, well, how are you feeling? She says, I feel exhausted. He says, well, from hunger? He goes, no. You said on the 4th day, I just need to skip all day. Amazing what a little exercise will do. A lot of us still operate on false assumptions. We get into our mind the way things should be or the way the things must be, and we get hung up on that. I once heard a Unity minister share that he had received a letter from an 80-year-old woman saying that she has this terrible inferiority complex and wants to know what she can do to let go of it. And that can be one of those lingering things that so many of us have a challenge with, and that's that we feel inadequate. And for me also, even after I was ordained a minister in 2002, I just didn't feel up to it. And then some of the students, we had a minister who had been, minister for, I guess he was 12 years. We knew him, it was basically a group of us, there were about 5 of us who were from the Chicago area in the seminary at the same time. And so this minister came from Chicago, and that subject came up, and he said, God, after 11 years, I still don't feel quite worthy of what people, seem to expect of me. I don't feel worthy of being called a reverend. And I know for me, too, growing up Catholic, and there was that sense of just looking up to the priests that they were holier than thou. And of course, over the last 40 years, that's all kind of come crashing down as we recognize that, they're spiritual beings having a human experience too. Unfortunately, a not very unpleasant one for some of them. So many people look outside themselves for validation, want other people to assure them that they're okay. And the challenge is that the other people are doing the same thing. Have you ever considered that if you're feeling inadequate to others, that other people may be feeling the same way? And so here we are doing this dance around each other, just hoping that that the other person doesn't discover the way we're feeling, our unworthiness or our inferiority complex. And then, of course, it's very admired when people use self-deprecating humor, tearing themselves down. But I always encourage people, that's fine, but recognize what you believe about yourself. And if you are affirming something out loud, you're affirming something that you really want to create in your life. Swimming coach Albert Hubbard has a great quote. He says, man is not what he thinks he is, but whatever he thinks he is. So each of us need to make a decision within us. Do we want to be the way we are today, or do we want to be the way we were yesterday? And if not, what do we want to be? We have dominion over the earth, and that's symbolic of that we have dominion over our thoughts and feelings. When a negative thought or a negative feeling starts to run away with my mind, I have the ability to say, whoa, no, wait a minute here. And this is where affirmations come into place. I say, no, that's not the way I want to feel about myself. That's not the way I want to think about myself. And then we decide what it is we do want to do and make that declarative statement, that affirmation. So, inadequacy, though, has a pleasant aspect of it, isn't that it's a spur for many people to do more than they ever thought they could do. I know Oprah Winfrey, talks so often about just the unpleasant upbringing she had, and the sexual molestation that she had. And I know another one that I think of is I can see her face, I'm just blanking out on her name. But you understand, I mean, a lot of people have talked about there was a story this last year with the college football players coming out of college, that there were these twin brothers who were both, the one had already been drafted in the NFL, and the other one was hoping to be drafted, but he was missing one hand from an accident when he was a kid. But here he had achieved the level where the NFL teams were deciding that, yeah, we'd like to have this guy. He's that talented. So could it be, that the thing that you feel unworthy about or inadequate about is exactly what you need as a filter for this world so that you can achieve things that you didn't think you could achieve when you were a child? Any challenge in our life is an opportunity for spiritual growth. That's why they come into our lives. We have an opportunity to stretch beyond what we thought we were. And when you reach the point where you don't have any more spiritual growth left, your relatives will be calling a minister to arrange for your memorial service. That's the point where we know. And then, of course, as so many in Unity believe in reincarnation, well, then we have the decision to make. Are we going to come back and try it again? Each lifetime we kind of come up with this outline of things that we really want to realize about ourselves. So, Jesus, I would say, had the same situation. He was a human being, but he was a spiritual being having a human experience. And he had his challenges, and it says so right there in the Gospels. His temptations in the wilderness. He, in the Garden of Gethsemane, when it was imminent that he was going to be crucified, he's like, God, take this cup from my hand. I don't want this. I mean, if there's some way I can get out of this, please, show me. And then he came to peace with it. Even when he was crucified, he said, God, God, why hast thou forsaken me? Luckily, he said a few other sentences after that, or we wouldn't have the Christian religion probably, but the key is that, you see it already there in Jesus' story, that, he had those moments of like, here I am put on the earth, and what he said he was put on the earth is, I came that I shall bear witness to the truth. And we believe that Jesus is showing us how we can live. The crucifixion is symbolic of us being willing to kill off that old idea of who we are and move forward in a healthier way. And the truth is, each one of us is exactly where we need to be when we need to be. There's a Bible story many of you have heard of, David and Goliath. Now, I know some of you may not have read it for many years. You kind of remember the outline. Some may not have heard it. So let's explore it a little bit. Now, we believe in Unity that every Bible narrative story has symbolism within it and can teach us how to live our lives here in 2019 and beyond. So in the Hebrew Bible, which was formerly known as the Old Testament, the first book of Samuel, 17th chapter, the Philistines and the Israelites have been warring with each other, but they've come to a stalemate, and they're on opposite sides of a valley. And they're just shouting at each other and just trash-talking each other across this little brook that goes through the valley. And finally, this big guy named Goliath comes out. He's described as being 9 feet tall, and that the ground would shake when he walked. He says, I think we can end this war. Why don't you send out one person to me who will fight one-on-one, man-to-man, and whoever wins the war, and the others will become the slaves. Well, the Israelites are like, boy, we don't have anybody who could stand up to this 9-foot guy who shakes the ground. But all of this is going on, and Goliath is out there yelling. Across the hill into the valley comes a young fellow named David. His older brothers are in the army under King Saul, who's leading them in battle. And he's been sent by his dad to go and bring food to the army for that day. He's a shepherd, and he's watching this, and he says, why doesn't anybody take this guy on? I could take him. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, right, David. But he says, well, wait a minute. As a shepherd, he says, I have killed a bear. I have killed a lion. I certainly could take this dude. And so they start thinking, well, what do we got to lose? And so King Saul calls him over and takes his armor off and puts his armor on David, and David's kind of like, oh, he can't even support the weight of the armor. And here's my sword and stuff. And finally David says, no, just let me do it the way I know how to do it. And so he's got his staff, the stick with the hook on it for pulling in sheep. and he's got his slingshot or his sling. And he goes to the brook, and we're told that he picks up 5 stones, 5 smooth stones. And then he crosses over the river. And Goliath looks at him and laughs. Says, "What am I, a dog? You come to me with a stick? I'm going to cut you up and feed you to the wild animals and the birds." And in the 45th verse, David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword and a spear, but I come to you in the name of Jehovah, whom you have defied. This day Jehovah will deliver into my hand you, and I will strike you down and cut off your head, and I'll feed you to the wild animals and the birds." And Goliath started to laugh, and David takes one of the 5 stones, puts it in his sling, and fires it at Goliath's forehead. And the stone goes into his head. Goliath falls forward onto the ground. David runs up to him, pulls his sword out of his sheath, and cuts Goliath's head off. The Philistines, watching all of this in shock, just suddenly get up and run away. So have you ever had a Goliath in your life? A problem that you're looking at and you're like, I don't know how this is going to happen. This is a story about the inner conflict we have between looking at our outer appearances and knowing the truth within. So we turn to our metaphysical Bible dictionary. We discover that David represents the love of God and the love of expressing spiritual truth. The Israelites are the thoughts and feelings turned towards the spiritual, but on the other side of the valley, we've got the Philistines. Erroneous thoughts focused on outer appearances. Now, Goliath, as I said, obviously symbolizes a big problem. He's entrenched in a conspicuous belief in something that's not real. The taunts that he does and the Philistines were doing are those thoughts of despair that sometimes rise within us. Because whenever we step forward into a challenge, they'll have that there. You can sometimes hear those negative voices within trying to talk us down, trying to talk us away from doing what it is we know we need to do. And then, of course, the armor that Goliath has is the appearance that we can't beat this guy. So David is ready to overcome the challenge. He takes his sling and he throws the rock at Goliath. Now, the sling is just focusing our attention. You know, back then they didn't have these, but today we'd say he was laser focused on what he needed to do. And he shot the stone into Goliath's forehead. Now, for those of us who know about the 12 powers, who are represented by our 12 disciples, we have the imagination, the will, and the understanding, all kind of centered there in the forehead, the functions of our mind. So this rock goes into there, takes out all of those misunderstandings, takes the imagination to a whole new level of what can happen, and just expresses the willpower that we're ready to just drop this guy. And sure enough, he crashes to the earth. And then David cuts off his head, which is basically just cutting off that thought, that idea forevermore. And it seems like every error has its own seed of destruction. So as we tie together all of the symbolism, what we see is we have this obstacle where we are frozen in fear, we're in a stalemate, and we just don't know what to do. And I think we've all been there at one point or another. We have our doubts, we have our concerns, but deep down we know that this can happen. So, is Goliath shouting at you? Are you feeling those doubting or those negative voices or negativity? Yet the love that David represents, the love of God, the love of spiritual truth, keeps moving forward. So we focus our thoughts and words using our affirmations to recognize we can dissolve what it is we may have created in our life and create something new. I'm going to have Duncan put up a slide. The 5 stones. Now, usually in Bible symbolism, the 5, when you see the word 5, it means our 5 senses of the physical world. But I think these have got a deeper meaning to them. Humility, self-appreciation, self-acceptance, determination, and faith. Now, humility. Now, you think that might be counterintuitive, but have you noticed any bully really has an underlying problem of feeling inadequate? That's why the bully has got that bravado and is out there trying to express express himself in a way that it will make you feel fear. So what's the important question to ask yourself is, who do I think I am? Who do you think you are? Now, an inadequate person, like I said before, is concerned about what other people think, when other people are generally concerned about what you think. So humility is just a sense of, it's not so much meekness as just centered in what we call the spiritual truth, being centered in God. We let go of any preconceived notions. We know that whatever the situation must be, it might be a different way to work our way around it. And we have humility about knowing that we have the capacity to get it done. The second stone is self-appreciation. I know over my lifetime, when I've dealt with this sense of unworthiness myself. As a kid, I grew up, I was one of the shortest kids, in my school. It was a grammar school. And it was a Catholic grammar school, and you know how wonderful kids can be to each other. But yeah, in Catholic school it can be even more challenging. Because suddenly you have that wrath of God as an aspect of it too. You don't finish your homework, God's going to condemn you to hell. But if we're willing to accept ourselves, it's so many people who have a challenge with inadequacy have these high ideals for themselves. And there's nothing wrong with having high ideals. Robert Browning, of course, wrote, "A man's reach should exceed his grasp. Otherwise, what's a heaven for?" So when I look at my life experiences and I look at the unpleasant and the pleasant, I see how many times the unpleasant has taught me things, made me stronger, made me... Well, there's kind of two ways of having the unpleasantness. One is showing me the way I don't want to do it in the future. And the other way is where I will have an unpleasant experience and I recognize the lessons that come through it. The other aspect of it is recognizing my potential and my capacity in the future. It's like, okay, I've been through this. I've been through hell. I can remember, you see a lot of veterans, especially from the Vietnam area. It's like, when I die, I'm going to heaven because I've already been to hell. The third stone is self-acceptance. I just said that before, but self-appreciation is what I was saying before, but self-acceptance, a little bit different. I've observed that many people who work with unity principles believe that they absolutely work for everybody else except themselves. So, are you there? Truth is, we always teach other people how to treat us. So, how are you teaching other people how to treat you? The fact is that if you are alive, you are an integral part of this universe, an integral part of this world. You are bringing your gifts, your passions, your talents to this world to make this world a better place. You need to play your part. Or what's the point? We're all here to do the things that we need to do. So, let's accept ourselves, our strengths, our weaknesses, and recognize that we have plenty to bring to the table. And number 4 is determination. We open our minds to the divine mind, we get the divine idea that we know is right for us, and we have to have the willpower to move forward, the determination to proceed, even when everyone else around you says, don't do it. Brain science was advanced by a neurologist who had a stroke, and he lost most of his cognitive functions. But what he discovered over the next couple of years was all of that was able to come back because other parts of the brain could be trained to do the things that the other part of the brain did. Before that, it felt that the brain was completely compartmentalized, that couldn't happen. So David is an example of the determination that we need in light of outer appearances. And then last but not least is faith. Now you might ask, well, what if I don't have faith? Everybody has faith. It's just a matter of being willing to express it. There's a difference between belief and faith. Belief, you can believe in anything, but true faith needs to be placed in what we know God is, in God as we know God to be. So, what do you believe in? Who do you believe in? If we believe that we're inadequate, we'll demonstrate it. If we believe, however, that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and that we're here with our special gifts, our special talents, our special passions, and that we have spiritual gifts that we can express in the world through our strengths and our weaknesses, then we're going to make a difference. We have the power to change our thoughts and feelings. We have the power to put our faith in God. Now, is it possible that the stone, remember David had 5 stones, but he just chose one? I'm guessing it was faith. There's an etching in a cathedral in Europe that says, "Fear knocked at the door, but when faith opened the door, no one and nothing was there." So when facing Goliath, be sure you take the 5 stones with you. Humility, self-appreciation, self-acceptance, determination, and faith. Our closing video describes a young woman who's facing a Goliath in her own life. And this is from Michelle Miller of the CBS Evening News.